Welcome back to our special election coverage. Back with me, Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger. So, Congressman, it's unclear, obviously, who will ultimately win control of Congress. What is clear is that there was no red wave. Do you think Republican leaders are reassessing the role that Donald Trump has in the future of the party? Because it seems like this is an opportunity. If they are ever going to do that, this is an opportunity to do that.
Well, I hope so. I was here on January 7th, basically thinking that this was the time to reassess whether or not Donald Trump was the future of the party. I think, the question that remains is, so Donald Trump is going to throw Kevin McCarthy under the bus. I'm just put that down in red right now and underline it. The MAGA base is going to throw this on Kevin McCarthy. The question is, does the rest of the Republicans have the courage to stand up to Trump, or do they once again acquiesce to him? Because we all know him. He's not going to take the blame for this, at least in his own mind. This is certainly a rejection of the MAGA base. It's also a huge message that candidate quality matters. And I think in Wisconsin, look, this is a message to Democrats. I think a moderate Democrat would have crushed Ron Johnson in Wisconsin because he is one of the more disliked Republican senators. Close race, but I think a moderate could have done that.
Governor Ron DeSantis obviously won big in Florida, including getting a lot of Latino votes. Do you see him as the future Republican of the Republican Party?
Yeah, well, I don't, but I think, certainly he's probably in the lead right now, kind of in a bit of a front runner status. Again, I think what we're going to see over the next week is, how does Donald Trump pivot from this? Because he's certainly not going to take his loss. He's going to try to throw DeSantis under the bus. He's certainly going to go after McCarthy. And if he's able to do that successfully, and he has been over the last number of times, then again, Ron DeSantis is going to have a kind of a short-lived victory here. I think it's important, though. This is not, Ron DeSantis winning big was huge, and congratulations to him. It's not necessarily a message that we saw last night, though, that the rest of the country wants necessarily Ron DeSantis type, leadership, I'll call it. I think he has a real opportunity to take the Republican nomination to win the presidency, but it's not going to be kind of this in-your-face thing that we've seen from Donald Trump. This is what we saw last night.
There's really a warning to the White House as well in these votes. I mean, we've heard, word from the White House say there's a sense of vindication, I think was the word that one source in the White House used. How do you view how the White House should handle what happened moving forward? I mean, what is the lesson for the White House? What is the lesson for the Republicans?
Yeah, I think there's no doubt last night was way better than what the White House expected. It's way better than what history ever points to. And I think they should feel good about what happened last night. Look, for all the hits that people, hit Joe Biden with, I mean, he's had a lot of victories, and last night was one of those. But I think the reality is, you still have, this cannot be a lesson to Democrats that we don't have to address inflation. We don't have to address crime. We don't have to talk about the border. That's not the case. I think a lot of these candidates won despite that still being a big issue. And looking forward to 2024, that's going to be important. Now, what'll be interesting, Anderson, is if there's just a very, very slim Republican majority in the House of Representatives. This is way out of left field, but there is a possibility then, if you can get two Republicans, for instance, to vote for a certain candidate and get the Democrats to vote for a moderate Republican type speaker, you could have a really interesting Speaker of the House race. I'm not predicting it. I'm just throwing that in people's ears that if it's that tight, you could do something pretty unusual in that.
As you know, one of your colleagues on the January 6th committee, fellow military veteran Democrat Elaine Luria, projected to lose her reelection bid in Virginia. I'm wondering what your reaction to that is. Obviously, the same thing happened to Congresswoman Liz Cheney in her primary this summer.
Yeah, I mean, Elaine will be the best to tell if the January 6th committee had any impact on that. I'll say this about her. Look, it's she's a fellow veteran. It's been great working with her. She's somebody that genuinely cares for her country. We ran one of the last hearings together, and I'm sad for the country that she lost. At the same time, look, she stood up for the right thing. Very few people ever get an opportunity to actually stand up for the right thing. Even fewer actually do it. She gets to look in the mirror, and I'll tell you, there's no victory, no loss, no anything that I think can compare to either the shame of having to look in the mirror and know that you went along with lies, or the pride of being able to look in the mirror and say that you stood alone. And I think she can take that pride home.
Assuming the former president announces he is going to run. There was reporting he might announce that next week. What happens then in the Republican Party? I mean, what is that? What are the ripple effects of that immediately?
This is $1 million question. There is a small possibility that if he makes that announcement, somebody like a Ron DeSantis or even Mike Pence or whatever could jump in, and you could have a real battle, for the soul of the party. It's just, again, though, there is such a the base is so rabid for Donald Trump, the MAGA base at least, that I don't think it's going to take long for him to be able to kind of parry the attack, put it on McCarthy, put it on anybody but himself, and once again kowtow some of these people, some of these quote unquote leaders that don't know how to lead, back into I'm in the Donald Trump camp, because they just don't want to lose their primary. Keep in mind, even though it was a bad night for Republicans, you're still going to have a lot of election deniers coming to the House of Representatives right now, even people that are like borderline white supremacist, open white supremacists. So this will be interesting. I'm also very interested, by the way, in the Lauren Boebert race. Nobody saw that one being as close as it is, and she very well may lose in Colorado 3.
Congressman Adam Kinzinger, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.